Frontend Development at 2018. What's in your stack? If someone finds a bigger topic to talk about, please let me know. I handed in this proposal and figured out last week, well, I'm not sure if this was a good idea. But let's see. My last try one was 1 hour 20. We will make 55, hopefully. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Stefan. I'm from Berlin. My main interest these days is open source. I sometimes teach CSS and Node in Berlin. I run a few meetups, and I work for Contentful. And Contentful is a content management infrastructure in the cloud. So when you want to build JavaScript apps or whatever apps, and you don't want to set up your own server with your content management system, and you just want to have a scalable, flexible system, you can give Contentful a try. And I do mainly front-end development for quite a while. And it's a big love in my life. And when I started front-end development, this was basically 2011. And the role of a front-end engineer, I'm not even sure if it was an engineer at this point, was quite different than it was today. So I literally had job interviews 2011 where it was like, yeah, the server-side developers are the real programmers, and the front-end engineers are making it pretty, right? It's just moving some CSS around. But now we have 2018. Is that me? And it looks a lot more like this. So over the last few years, the front end became actually engineering. And not only engineering, it became engineering with new tools and practices every year. And keeping track with all the stuff that is released and that is discovered is really, really hard. So this is basically my inbox. And you see that when I recorded this, there's actually an email coming in from NPM telling me about new stuff. So it's really, really hard to keep track with all the changes because we have new stuff. It feels like we have new stuff every month. So let's talk about what's in the front-end engineering stack in 2018. And let me give you a quick warning. What I will tell you is highly opinionated. There's way more stuff out there. And I'm not covering religious question. Vue, Angular, React, roll with it, whatever is your jam. NPM or Yarn? Competition is good, right? I think NPM is better, but it doesn't matter, right? And recently there was a tweet from James Long. He's the maintainer of Prettier. Who has heard of Prettier? That's the tool that finally helps us to figure out the problems we have with code style changes. So he said, I never used TypeScript. I never used Parcel. I never used Elm. I never used serverless. I never used Vue. And I don't feel behind. And that's really hard for me, but this is the truth. We shouldn't feel behind. He chooses his stack. Am I doing something wrong here? He chooses his stack, and he just ships with it. And one thing that I want to tell you is, when you choose your tool stack, ask yourself why you should use a tool. Don't just pick your tool because it's fancy right now, or it's doing something. A good tool should solve a problem, it should keep you productive, and it should make you happy. And we had 1 year ago, or 2 years ago, we had the release of Redux, right? Redux is a tool for state management and React applications. It can be used in any framework. And it was, from one to the other day, it was in every stack. And Dan Abramov, he is actually the inventor of Redux. He wrote a post quite a little bit after. He was like, chill, people. Redux has a reason. It doesn't have to go in every app. If you don't have to deal with a lot of state that is across several components, don't use Redux. This tool has a purpose. And my most favorite tool that I use every day is probably the web itself. So in December 2017, HTML 5.2 was released. And what was in there? Well, the dialog element was in there. And I'm really excited about this one, because this will finally solve the modal problem. Right? So how can I use the dialog element? So here you see the dialog element. This is hidden by user default style sheets of the browsers. Then we can grab this element just from the DOM, and this then has functions available like show modal and close. This is solving the modal problem. And it then has some styling properties that I can use to finally solve the issue of overlays. And when you use that, you see it here in action. And this doesn't look very fancy, but this solves also all the problems that a good modal brings with you. A good modal doesn't allow that you can tap out of the modal and access the content behind that. That is really hard to do. A good modal is focusable when you open it. All these kind of things are going into the platform itself, and I think this is really exciting. What is the support for the dialog element today? But it is polyfillable, and maybe you don't want to reinvent the wheel and you want to play, or you want to bet on the platform itself. If you want to know what was added to the spec, there's this really nice blog post, which I highly recommend. But then also we have new CSS in 2018 available, which is great, right? We finally made it. So here you see an example of my private website. You see this long container on the right side. This is just a long, unordered list. There are no floats, no additional markup. It's just a clean, clean list. So how can I use CSS Grid today? Well, it's display grid. And then there's this property that is called grid template columns. And I can say that I want to repeat all the entries. I want to make them auto-scale without a fit. And then there's this magic thing called min-max. And then I can define, OK, I want the containers, the items, be at least 20 M, but it should not be bigger than one fraction. So what that means is that everything scales automatically, and it will just fit into the container and follow the grid. This is making a website responsive with 4 lines of CSS. And then you can also do cool stuff, like this. So you can define, for example, grid row. And what I'm doing there is shorthand for this, basically. I'm defining this container, the red one there, and it should start at the 2nd row, and it should end at the 5th row. This is super cool. No additional markup required. So what's the support for grid? Bam! If you want to learn grid, the best resource that I think is out there is Wes Boss. He does online videos. And his CSS Grid course is really valuable. And the videos are really short, so you can learn these step by step by step. Then we have also focus within. And this CSS rule, I couldn't be less excited when I saw this for the first time. So what this gives you a hook to figure out when you have an element and something inside of this element is focusable, right? So the use case you see there is that I'm highlighting the parent container when the input in this container has focus. And I was like, yeah, that's not too exciting. But with focus within, we maybe can finally figure out CSS drop-down menus. Because with a little bit of nifty CSS trickery here, this works without JavaScript. I can tap into this first list element, and then the one below opens, and it stays open because I can use focus within. If you're interested in how to do these kind of things with CSS only and make them keyboard accessible, because that's the trick here, this article is really nice. So what's the support for focus within? Polyfillable. I think this is super cool. So what I want to tell you is that today, and I'm watching specs and browser evolvement really closely, Evergreen browsers evolve quickly. And just because I have a little red cross here now doesn't mean that the red cross is there next month or in 6 months. But also JavaScript evolved, right? And we now have, finally, ECMAScript modules, import statements, right? Dealing with modules and dependencies in the browser. And how does that work in the front-end world? Right, we can include the scripts, and then there's this new thing called type module, which the browser picks up when it supports modules. And then there's also, for legacy stuff, for browsers that don't support it, there's the no module attribute. This little line, or this element, has a few different things to deal with, though. So JavaScript that runs in this file is strict mode by default, so we can use strict. This on top level is undefined. The variables on top level there are only local to the script. They are always loaded asynchronous, so no need for async or defer to not block rendering. And they execute after the HTML is finished parsing. So even when you have an inline script with type module, it won't be executed before the HTML is done with parsing. What support do we have? It's there. That's super cool. Does that now mean that we move away from bundling and throw out all the build process out of the window? No, it doesn't. I spent last year weeks researching this, so if you want to know how this affects your build process, you can read this article. But on the other hand, actually this happened today, Evan View, he's the maintainer of Vue.js. He will make new builds possible that use this, because then we can save a little bit of boilerplate, right? This is code we don't have to execute to make modules work in browsers. Another thing that I'm excited about today is actually types in JavaScript. I'm a JavaScript developer for quite a while, and I was always like, that's fine, I can deal with JavaScript, right? But then TypeScript came along, and I was always like, who needs those things? I mean, it worked before. But a month ago, I opened a pull request in our ecosystem, and you see that this pull request had 21 changed files. And what I did is, I changed this function. So this is TypeScript. The beauty of TypeScript is that it works with JavaScript, and then you can just add types step by step by step. And this definition there actually says that the async function migration accepts the argument migration creator of type function and returns a promise that resolves with a collection of type intent. And I changed this one function, and I thought, well, this is not a big deal. And I changed it to this. And what happened is that everything broke. Because TypeScript was smart enough to figure out that I changed the signature. This is for people coming from other languages, constant thing. For a JavaScript developer, this is magic. And Webpack, for example, recently switched to TypeScript 2. And just by switching to TypeScript, they found 9 bugs that I didn't know about, just because TypeScript checked their code base. This can bring you a lot of safety. And the obvious one for TypeScript is you get auto-completion, right? So for a JavaScript developer, that's a big deal. So what you see there is that I use the Contentful SDK, I create a client, and I get really nice auto-completion down the tree below, which tells me what I can use in here. So there's a response, and I know that this response has items, and the first item has fields, and I can go down the tree. This brings a lot of productivity in JavaScript land. So when you're building large-scale JavaScript apps, take all the safety and help you can get, because this helps shipping better products. Also very popular last year, PWAs, Progressive Web Apps, right? They were everywhere. My friend Ola gave a talk about that. She just said, PWAs, something, something, just Google it, because you find enough resources for that. Progressive Web Apps have 3 main things. So they're reliable, they work offline, they are fast, so it's cutting-edge JavaScript, and they're engaging with push notification or something. So progressive web apps are basically the web approach for shipping apps that feel native. And the core technology of progressive web apps, and I've never thought that I will show this slide, but today is the day. Basically, the service worker is the core of progressive web apps. It's in the middle, and it sits between the browser and the internet. And with this, you can interfere requests that are going out, and you can define caching behavior, which helps you to make things work. Service worker was a hot topic last year, and it was always, is it ready yet? And it was not until a few months back. And Jake Archibald is maintaining this resource here, and he gives you all the information to know, is this supported now? Can we write progressive web apps? And when you Google this, what you find out there is these kind of low-level code snippets. This is how you define a service worker. You say that I want to listen to a fetch event, and then I want to do this or this or this. And I do think that it is important to know how this works. But we are now at the stage that we use different tools on top of that. So what you see there is Workbox. That's a project maintained by Google. And all I have to do to make a web app or website offline capable is these 4 or 5 lines of JavaScript. This is inside of my service worker. A service worker is just a JavaScript file that you load. I load the library, and I say, please, for these routes, go with the strategy network first. This means that the service worker that sits between me and the internet tries to fetch the file, but if it's not there, it uses a cache version. And this means with these few lines, I just make my website offline capable. I think this is super, super cool. Who's running progressive web apps in production? Just a heads up, there's a breaking change. So usually what happens is when you visit a progressive web app is that at some point a banner pops up that tells you, hey, do you want to install this app? The user doesn't know that it's a progressive web app, it's just installing the thing. And usually this happened automatically, but there's now a breaking change, which means that you have to take care of that. So just a heads up. So what I want to tell you is know the tools, but then trust what is out there already. When you're building progressive web apps, you're usually running on a kind of recent front-end stack anyways, and you're probably working with some APIs, and there's this buzzword hanging around, right? So GraphQL is a new way on how we deal with APIs. And recently I was reading an article that was published by Airbnb. So there's this dialogue. So there's a backend engineer who says, so you're saying this GraphQL will allow any web or native engineer to arbitrarily query basically any field and any backend servers recursively, however they want, without any backend engineers involved. Yep, this is what it is. So this is the world where I'm coming from, right? I'm building a web app, and I fetch resources, one request per resource, step by step. When you're building a complex JavaScript app, this is a lot of requests that are flying there. And then the most API-driven, the most RESTful APIs I work with then kind of work around REST and include a query parameter that is kind of includes or select, that slims down the payload a little bit. So this is just hacking kind of REST. So with GraphQL, this all changes to something like this. So there's one request. It is a post, because GraphQL endpoints also allow you to mutate state. This is a little bit tricky, but yeah. And then you define a query inside of your request. And what you see there is that I want to have a course with the ID whatever, and I want to have the title, the slug, and the skill level. I am in the front and can decide what data I want to have. And this works recursively down the tree. And this is then the response, which gives a lot of power and flexibility in the front end. Also, GraphQL comes with this really nifty tool that is called Graphical. A GraphQL endpoint also has a schema definition, which means that with this, I can just open Graphical with a GraphQL endpoint. I can see what data I can query, and it's self-documenting. This can be increase your productivity enormously. So I truly believe that GraphQL will change the way we work completely. And over the last year or two, also new approaches to static sites appeared. Jamstack was a topic 2 years ago, and it's getting hot again. So when I built my first static site, this is what I did. So I had some templates and content files, Markdown usually. Then I brought in a static site generator, and then I got a website, right? Cool. But when I wanted to add some functionality, or I wanted to style it, or I wanted to do something that it was not supported by the static site generator, I added my assets, which went into Gulp or Grunt, if someone remembers these. And now I had two different things, right? Templating on the server side for the static site generator, let's say in Haml or something else, and templating in my JavaScript thing when I click a button. I think I'm moving too much on the stage here, which meant that I had a constant context switch. When you have to I had to maintain templates twice, not only in one company. So what we can do now is, also, when you want to bring API data in this approach, what you had to do is, you had to write this API data to disk, so that the static site generator can pick it up. And then in the front end, you just use it with standard AJAX. Let's change that. Cool. Does it work all right? Yeah. I think this is a massive downside, because I'm dealing with API data every day. So what we have now, that we can unify these two contexts, finally, because we have universal JavaScript apps, completely JavaScript, right? JavaScript on the server side, JavaScript in the front end. And how it works is that you use the stuff that runs in the browser later, generates static HTML with it, and then the front-end JavaScript kicks in, and it does a process that is called hydration, and then it just moves over the HTML you just served. And this way, you can solve these problems that I just described. So we can then serve, I'm not the lucky person today, you can serve static HTML. You have a unified code base, so the same code runs on your server side for generation and the browser. The developer tooling we have in JavaScript land is today. I don't want to develop websites without hot reloading anymore. This is super cool. We've got an extremely rich ecosystem. NPM, there's always a package for that. And we can use cutting-edge technologies quite easily because these new tools are ready for that. I also wrote about that if you're interested. So what tools I am talking about here? The most present ones are Next and Nuxt and Gatsby.js. So Next is developed by Zeit, and it's React-based, can be used as a static site generators. Nuxt is just a Vue ecosystem trolling Next, so don't be confused there. And then there's Gatsby. And Gatsby kind of is the most successful one today because it moves the whole thing to a new level. It's based on React, and you can ship a progressive web app that gets all the good performance scores with just enabling a plugin. This is super nice. And it bets also on GraphQL. So this is the current front-end static site hipster stack, if you're interested in this. So in the front-end world today, I think that every website is a web app, and every web app is a website, which doesn't mean that you have to ship a bunch of JavaScript files all the time, because you can still ship only HTML, but you can use the technology you use every day. When you use these tools, you will hit a wall at some point, though, because you have to configure a lot of things. And this is why there is a new trend going on that is called zero-configs JavaScript. And the biggest problem we had were bundlers. So bundlers or build tools are the tools that take all the files and that make a nice, small thing that runs performantly, right? And the tool that wins the race today is Webpack. And Webpack got so much out of hand that people made jokes out of it. So people call themselves Senior Webpack Config Manager or Executive Webpack Configuration Engineer. Tweets like this are everywhere, right? Because Webpack can be extremely hard to work with. And what happens if a tool gets so popular and it has some obvious issues? Well, competition starts, right? So what I want to show you is Parcel, which is a tool that I use for prototyping today. And I'm doing a live demo. So let's see how this goes. So what you see here is my terminal. Yeah, that works. So let's go to a directory that I don't have to delete later. All right, and let's create some files here. And let's, yeah, these look actually not too bad. Cool, so let's open these in my editor here. So wait a second. What do we have here? So I'm using VS Code. Cool, so we have a few files here, right? And I want to start my journey with the index.html. And because I don't want to type everything, let's just snippets parcel. Let's just do this. All this, what this does, it includes an index.js file, right? So let's go to index.js and let's say import main from main.js. And then let's execute this. And then let's go to main.js, export default. Let's define a function. And let's create an element maybe, const elem document create element div. Let's add a class here. Foo. Let's set some inner text here. Hey, what's up? And then let's just add this element to the body. Element. But now we're missing some styling, right? So let's just go import styles from what is it called? Main CSS. Why is that not highlighting? And let's just say foo, color red. Cool. Is something obvious wrong here? Import styles from, cool. So let's go here and let's just run Parcel. The syntax highlighting is not working, so this probably breaks. Let's see. No! Okay. And now I've got a URL here, right? Which is my local environment. Let's open this. Did anyone see the error? So what? Ah, right. Like that? Still more? All right. So let's see if that works. Is it red? Nice. So what just happened is that I just defined one single HTML file, and Parcel figured all the rest. It checked, all right, there's a JavaScript file. Cool, there's CSS. I should deal with this probably too. And there are some other JavaScript files, and I want to resolve these and make a proper nice bundle out of that. And it works with TypeScript, Sus, all zero config. This is super, super nice. So when you have competition in the tooling space, that's always a good thing, right? So Sean Larkin, one of the maintainers of Webpack, figured out, well, we should maybe fix something here. So Webpack also improved just because Parcel showed up. And all the tools, the static site generators that I just showed you, also updated to Webpack 4 then. And all the fancy new technologies like code splitting and serving several bundles for different routes and all these kind of things, you get these with these new tools for free today. And when we talk about zero config, we also have to talk about toolkits. Starting a React app was extremely tedious last year ago, right? But then Create React App appears, which is a zero config generator to start your React applications without all the hassle to figure out what tools should I use. And then the same happened for Vue and Preact. And then you've got your project running in 2 minutes, zero configuration. And when you look into these, what you will find is that all the dependencies and all the tools are abstracted away to make it easier to develop. They provide a lot of things out of the box. And you only have to deal with a single dependency then, so-called a toolkit. If you're interested to read more about these, there's this really nice GitHub repository, and there are a lot of starters, zero config to get you started. So what I want to tell you is that when you choose your tools, a good tool should just work, but then should be highly configurable when you have to scale it up. So when you're building your apps then, you also want to be on the safe side, right? So new automation tools also appeared. And what you should probably do when you run a big app in production is you should write end-to-end tests. And I love writing end-to-end tests, right? Said no one ever. And there's a new tool out there that is called Cypress. And Cypress literally blew my mind, because with Cypress, it actually becomes fun again. So let's just quit this, and let's go to my private website, and let's open this. So what you see is my private website, and it includes a Cypress config somewhere there, which is currently empty, because I didn't configure much. And then there's this Cypress folder, which has a few things, like fixtures and plugins. They are not really important right now. And then there's a test file. So what we can do now is, we can just, I have Cypress installed globally. So let's kick that off and let's see what happens. Cypress is based on Electron, but works with all the other browsers too. So what you see here, let me just move that over, is a project management window. And this is basically the test file you just saw. And when I kick this off, and it's again here, when I kick this off, you see the interface of Cypress. So what you see on the right side is a real browser and the test case that I just wrote. And the cool thing about that is that I can inspect the browser at the point in time of the test case. So let's just write some tests now here. So what you see here is I want to test the headline. I'm visiting this website, and I've got this sci element available, which lets me query the DOM. So I can just say, OK, H1, cool. But let's move VS Code to the left side now. That didn't turn out well. And that's the wrong window. Here we go. So let's just get the H1, and let's check if it contains my name. And when I now go open Cypress on the right-hand side, you see that it automatically queries what is going on. And I see and can inspect everything that happens there. So let's write another test, which is like sci get H1. Let's grab the length of all the elements that are in there. It's lengths should equal 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, Cool. So let's break that. Sweet. With Cypress, you can develop your end-to-end tests next to each other, and you have also the functionality to record videos of your runs. This all comes automatically with Cypress. I think this is really exciting. If you're interested to learn and see how to get started with Cypress, this is Gleb Bamutov. He's the VP of Engineering of Cypress, and he took 30 minutes of time, and we set Cypress up for my site. This is really valuable if you want to start playing around with this. But it's not only end-to-end testing. I think the stack today is also about utilities. So last week or something, I had this discussion at Contentful, and we published an article with a broken link. Right? How often does that happen? So I was like, can we make that please part of the manual checklist of the editors? And Chris, he's the CMO, he was like, no, dude, that's the wrong approach. That doesn't scale. Let's automate that. Right? So who remembers Phantom.js? I was a big fan of Phantom.js. So Phantom.js was basically a headless WebKit browser that you can control and script. Unfortunately, it's not maintained anymore because Chrome got a headless mode, and the Chrome folks or the Google folks are now maintaining Puppeteer, which is a nice interface on top of a headless Chrome, which means that you can automate whatever you want with it, with a real Chrome. So this is how this works. You have to just grab Puppeteer, define the URL, then you launch the browser, open a new page, and then you define go to the URL. You wait until all the network is done, and then you close the window again. This is all it takes to open up a new browser. So let's just evaluate all the URLs that are in the page. And evaluate is crucial here because now we're switching context from Node to the website itself. So this stuff runs in the website I just opened. So I get all the links there, I grab all the hrefs, and then I'm using a set to get rid of all the duplicates. So I have now a lot of URLs. Then I bring in node fetch, and I check, hey, do all these URLs give me a 200 when I request them? And map that. And then I'm filtering out all the valid ones. And then I'm just writing a console log message, right? So with these few lines of JavaScript, this actually opens up a browser that I don't see and tells me what links are broken on my site. This is super cool for automation. But the Google folks also maintain this repository here, which is Puppeteer examples. So maybe you want to automate to figure out how much not used CSS and JavaScript you have on your site. Or maybe you want to create big sitemaps. You could say, well, I could do this with curl, which is not true when you have some client-side rendering in place, right? With this, you can do this. Maybe you want to check if your service worker and your offline capabilities are working correctly. Or you want to just compare yourself with your competitors, and I think this is really cool. So you can load several windows side by side, and just because you can run headless, but you don't have to. So you see here that I opened 2 pages next to each other, and I see how fast they load, and I have information available on how fast they load, and I can dig into that if I want to. So what I want to tell you in this section is automate everything and spend your time with fun stuff. I would say, though, that this is very, very much fun stuff. And another big word last year, and it will continue, is serverless, right? Horrible name with different meanings for different people. But I think Chris Coyer has the best explanation here. And he said, well, serverless, you can take a front-end skills and do things that typically only a back-end developer can do. Cool. And then I saw this tweet by Daniel. He's from Oslo. Is Daniel maybe here? That would be fun. OK. He said that serverless basically means I'm a JavaScript dev, and everything is Legos. Cool. So what does that mean? So let's take the JavaScript engineers out there. What we can do now is we can just play with Legos. So this is Google Cloud, AWS and Azure. Not my first choice, because it's a little bit too complicated sometimes. But if I want to host a static site, I would go for Netlify, which we will see in a second. For Node apps, I would go with Site, which is also, I can deploy Node apps really, really quickly that are scalable. For content management, I would go with Contentful. For fast search, implementing a really fast search is really hard. Algolia is doing a good job here. For authentication, maybe I don't want to deal with a database and stuff. I can go with Auth0. And for sending SMS and communication stuff, right, I could go with Twilio. There's a service for that. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So let's have a quick look. How can I, as a front-end developer, deploy sites quickly? So we have, for example, these two out there for a while. We've got Search and GitHub Pages, which let me deploy files really easily. Just push them or call a command. But these always had the problem that I had to connect them with a CI service that actually deploys the things when I commit something to the repository. Netlify now comes along, and it ships with CI included, which means then when you're going static, you can get your static sites in minutes with Netlify, because you just have to connect, you define the command you want to run, and you get HTTP2, HTTPS, and all the goodies for free. And for Node apps, I go with Zeit. So what you see here is a repository that only includes 2 files. It's a package JSON that uses Micro, which is a really slimmed-down HTTP library, and I'm exporting 1 file in index.html, index.js. And I just deployed this thing. I've got my own URL, which I can now access. Now, and Zeit provides something really, really nice. So when you go to _source, you can expect all the files that you just deployed. I think this is super cool. And share the URLs then. And also, all these tools, a lot of these tools are based on Docker, which means that they are not throwing them away. When I deploy now a change with now or Zeit, I just get a different URL, and these stay there forever, which is super cool when you want to, for example, have different environments, like your staging or your pull requests. These are still there. So you see there are 2 deployed sites with 2 different URLs that I just deployed in a few minutes without knowing how to do DevOps stuff. So by talking about serverless, we have to talk function as a service, right? Which is a little bit scary for me, but I think it's actually it's not that bad. So everything is based on a function. So you see here JavaScript that just exports the function say hello. When we run this in AWS, this is then a Lambda function. And to make this accessible to the internet, what we have to do is we have to configure API gateway. I think this is a horrible, complicated sounding name. When I heard that for the first time, I was like, I'm not sure if I can deal with that. Then let's just quickly switch that and bring in a status code and serve some JSON. And then we can go over to AWS and configure these things, right? And when you go to AWS, this is what you get. When I opened that for the first time, I was like, oh boy. When you make your way through this, you find eventually this little editor for the function and this configuration for API gateway. But working serverless in this environment can be a little bit tedious because you have to jump between windows and you have to set up a lot of dots and this is why we have frameworks on top of that. So this is the serverless framework, right? Just to bring in another word that includes serverless, which works with Google Cloud, AWS, Microsoft, and IBM. And we've got Cloudya.js, which works with AWS only. And I'm using today serverless with AWS. So how hard is it for me to deploy a function in AWS? Right, it's one YAML file. I define the service, I define the node version, and I define what HTTP methods I want to have. And I've got the same handler.js file here. So I can then use the serverless CLI, and I can deploy the thing. And I'm not scared anymore, because this actually works quite flawlessly. So what I do now at Contentful for quite a while is I'm pushing functions everywhere, right? And when I did it for the first time, one of our sysadmins came to me, Stefan, how did you configure API gateway? I was like, I configured what? But he was really smart, and this is how it should be. He didn't give me enough access to be dangerous anyways, right? He was just like, yeah, go with it, roll with it. This is a really nice stack. If you need an endpoint that does something, this is really, really nice. Because then you can connect all the dots. And serverless technologies work a lot with webhooks today. So what I had as a use case was we have a discourse forum, and I needed Slack integration, right, to post new posts to our Slack. Now, discourse has a Slack integration, but only for one Slack org. And we have got 2 Slack orgs, one internal one and one external one. So I wrote myself a Lambda function really quickly that pushed the stuff back. So how much? And now I've got the flexibility to distribute that data wherever I want, right? It's just JavaScript. And I can use the Node ecosystem to do whatever I want in it. So I just created a function that is called handle discourse. Then I parse whatever I get from discourse. I get the data I'm interested in. And then I post it to Slack. This took me 3-4 hours and is now part of our ecosystem. And the result is this. I think this is beautiful. So remember the example when I started the headless Chrome? I have that running in the cloud too. So I've got an endpoint that, and I think we can click that. Whoa, now I fucked it up. So when I go now here, what is happening? Copied the wrong one. Wait. So when I go now here, still broken? I messed up the URL. OK, I'm sorry about that. And I messed up my timer now. So when I'm going overtime, you have to let me know. So the mantra we have in the front-end team right now is just write a Lambda function for it. Lambda functions, you pay them only when they run. So if you have functions hanging around that are not executed, well, it is like that. But let me ask you a question. Could we build stuff for the web without a local setup, running completely serverless? So we have tools like JSBin and JSFiddle and CodePen available for a while, right? But there's this new tool that is called Code Sandbox. Has anyone used that? This is too good. So let's go to Code Sandbox. Dun, 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 dun. Code Sandbox. So what I can do here is I can create a new sandbox. And I want to go with React, right? And now I've got a really nice editor with all the tools already set up. And when I change something here, cool, this works. I've got a nice preview environment now available. The cool thing about Code Sandbox is, look at this. So let's just define a name here and let's make that bigger because you probably cannot see that. So let's go NDC Oslo demo. Sweet. And let's go to GitHub. Come on, Wi-Fi. So when I go now here we go. Can I now, where's Code Sandbox? Here we go. So what if I want to make commits? That also works. Update. So how do I deploy that now? Well, netlify. OK, so let's go to netlify. And let's import a new site from Git. All right, let's go with this one here. And let's go with NDC. NDC, how did I call it? It's this one, right? All right, so let's connect that. This now lets me define a build command, which is build in this case, which is by accident the default of the create React of Code Sandbox sandbox. And it defines a folder that I want to publish to the internet. OK. Netlify now also sets all the webhooks. So when a commit comes into GitHub, it will automatically start a new build. So let's commit something else. So let's commit that again. Yeah, come on. Oh, no. Wi-Fi. OK. But what if I now want to make that editable, for example? Because now I have to do GitHub changes here, right, to update contents in the headline. I could also use now Contentful, which I have open here somewhere already. And I could create a new space. Let's call it NDC Oslo demo. And what I can do is I can just define the data I want to deal with. So for example, I want to write a new page now. Cool. And let's just define some fields that I need to use in my React app. So let's call it title. And let's call it body. This accepts Markdown later on. So let's configure that. Let's save that. Come on. Let's go to create a new page. Let's go with NDC. Yo, what's up? Let's publish that. So So I now can go back to Code Sandbox. Let's make this a little bit smaller here. And let's just remove that for a second, and let's go with snippets. Check. So what I did here is I brought in a new dependency, which handles with Markdown. So let's just quickly install that. So where's the button? React Markdown. Cool. And let's add the contentful dependency. Contentful. Oh, I'm on time, by the way. Cool. So now I have to create a client to get the rights to get the data back. So let's just quickly do this. So what we can do here is we can grab the space ID. A space is a bucket of data. Oops. So which we can define here. And let's define an access token, which we can get in the access settings here and here. Keep doing that. Cool. Now we've got a token. Let's save that. And I feel like I'm messing that up, but let's see. So let's go to the entry that we just created. And let's grab the ID of this one, because this is what we want to use. And I keep doing that. Let's go here. And here we have the data we just created, right? And the cool thing about this is, now when we go to Netlify, this is also deployed already. So when we go here, one build didn't run, but you can then connect all the dots, and you have a setup running without any file on your local computer in a few minutes when you connect all the dots. So the setup would be that you create your code in Code Sandbox, you automatically connect it with GitHub, you push it with webhooks, you trigger new builds, then you can bring in Contentful to get fresh data so that editors have an interface to edit the data, and Contentful can then send another webhooks to Netlify. And this is 100% serverless, without any files on your computer. So what I want to say is that you should spend time building your businesses and not reinventing the wheel. And so when you look out there, this is a really nice resource when you want to get started with serverless. It's done by Chris Coyer. And CodePen actually also has CodePen projects, which is currently in beta. So this website that you saw just before is developed in CodePen, deployed with CodePen, and it's all running in the cloud. That is super cool. So this was it for 2018. So what is my wish for the future? That we finally figure this out. So web components are a way to define native components with the platform we have. And custom elements play a big, big role in these. So you can then just define your components with behavior and styles and ship them without the need of any framework. And the support of these is really not that bad. So then we can finally figure out the date picker discussion, right? So not 3, 4, 5 date pickers, but one date picker that wraps a web component. A new framework that is out there that is called Stencil, and Dominic will talk about Stencil tomorrow at 10:20. Is Dominic still there? No. So if you're interested in the new power of web components, I highly recommend check that out. So let's all bet on the platform, because I think this is the future in the long run anyways. So to close the whole thing, what I want to tell you is the pace of the front-end world is horrible, but don't worry to fall behind, because what James said is very, very true. Just deal with it. Choose your tools wisely and acknowledge that you cannot be always cutting edge. It's not possible. There's too much stuff out there. And just use what works for you. And that's it. Thank you. I was said that you should rate this talk with the paper thingies there.